Sony HD. Start that again. A Sony HD. Fantastic camcorder. And certainly is it, I don't know if one could say it's valuable, but it's certainly well worth the usage and worth getting. Sony HD Handycam Panasonic. Oh, Sony HD Handycam, that is, you know. And reviewing this very camera, sadly this one is no longer in action, but I'm still keeping it because it is a treasured asset of mine. And because it's a treasured asset, I thought I might represent this very, very camera itself. Sony cameras, nothing could beat a good Sony. In my personal opinion, that is, but everybody can share their own views, whether or not they've got a camcorder of their very own. I know many people certainly like to shoot videography footage on their smart telephone cameras built in on them, but there are also people who like shooting videography footage on camcorders like Sony or Canon or Dyson, or I think there's certainly various wonderful brandings of camcorders that various companies that make wonderful camcorders with rightfully good recording suitability and all the rest of things. Now, if we may get into review of things, this is a Sony Panasonic Sony Panasonic HDR-CX240E. Sorry. Yes, that's right. Sony HDR-240. Oh, Sony HD. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Sony HDR-CX240E and a Sony HDR-CX240E is certainly a camcorder I would be recommending for those of you who are interested in shooting videography footage, whether that be for YouTubing purposes or just for your own pleasure, whether they be videography or photography. But getting to a review of my review and reviewing Sony HD Panasonic cameras or Sony HDR-CX240E in this review, this is a Sony HDR-CX240E. Sadly, this one does not work anymore, as this one stopped working back in April of 2023, sadly I'm afraid, but it was quite old, and it did unfortunately, one day I was out shooting a bus video, and obviously it was one wet evening, it suddenly got very pouring with rain, so much rain, pouring with rain, and it got very, very wet, and eventually I tried to turn it on one day, it just wouldn't turn on. My coat was completely soaked up and wet, and obviously with the camera inside its pocket, it just got too wet. It was far too wet. I think it was so wet, it just eventually did not work, sadly. Oh, no, gotta be careful, you know. So this one had a good nearly 5.5 years, this one, and I was pleased it lasted me a great long time, as I would have been very surprised if this one had stopped working in, say, 2021 or 2022. But fortunately it kept working in 2021 and 2022 and only stopped in April of 2023, which was when I had to replace my camcorder. And the replacement camcorder I've got is the same, exactly the same make, Sony HDR-CX240E. That is, and hopefully this one will last me as long as nearly 5.5 years, or hopefully even 6 years. Hopefully that one will last me until 2029 or 2030, but I'm going to wait and see. I'm taking nothing for granted, and I'm Going to take every single day as it comes, every day it's in working operations, surely, speaking of which. Because if it stops working before 2029, 2030, it stops working before that point. That's the point I wanted to make fairly quickly. But getting to my review, my very views on the Sony HDR-CX240E camcorders, or certainly this one, when I first began to shoot videography footage on it, I was amazed with the quality. The quality, I thought, was almost picturesque and astounding. It really did astonish me happily. The quality, the videography quality did astonish me happily and most tremendously, hugely and greatly. And you know, it managed to capture, you know, my speech and things and backgrounds without a microphone, but the only drawback is that it does not cut out wind. And I think if oneself wants to cut out wind, you probably have to plug in a microphone for yourself. That's if you want to cut out wind. Normally I'm not terribly bothered with having a little bit of wind or such in the background, but maybe that'll be something in a few years' time for the future to very much consider, getting background wind cut out with a purchased microphone that's of rightful suitability for the Sony HDR-CX240E, you know. But my review on a Sony HDR-CX240E is positive. I was extremely happy with the result of it when I used this one back in a very long time ago now, and used it for a long time. I was always extremely pleased with the footage it could record. It, you know, and the photographed pictures it could take and videography footage it could take. I thought it was superbly fantastic, and all the more superb and picturesque. In a way, I thought I got the camera I have possessive ownership of is of rightfully useful suitability for videography recording footage, you know. And the camera before that was a Sony, but it was not a make of this one. It was a slightly different Sony make. It was fairly small, but it was not, it looked completely different to this one. Just to let each and every one of you know, that is. But what I can say, giving my views and opinions on the Sony CX240E, no, Sony HDR-CX240E camcorder, is that I'm always going to be with Sony. Any new camera I will need to purchase in the future, it's always going to be a Sony manufactured make of camcorder. But unless there was a different manufactured make of camcorder that was appealing to my interest, I would go for that one. But it would have to be of a fairly small make, so it could fit inside my coat pockets, that is. But or little bag I've got if it's far too hot to wear a coat, that is, you know. But of course, and all the rest of things. But I thought I might give the review all the same. Really the review of how this went over the years when I had it and how this one currently works. But I forgot to say one thing or two about how my current replacement Sony HDR-CX240E is working. I think it's working either in a similar way or just as well as this one when it was working before it sadly broke down, because you know nothing lasts forever, let alone camcorders. They sadly do not last forever, and same with computers and things or machines, and and clothes and shoes and all the rest of things, or even hats and coats. Well, I think coats can generally last a great long time, but I think some people replace their coats after about 10 or so years, or some don't. I don't think I could ever replace my coats at all, not in the slightest. You know, but sadly, obviously, I'm going to have to, from time to time, have to replace my camera recorders and computers as the years go by, because they will eventually stop working, as a lot of electronically powered equipment sadly stops working after a great while. You know. Thanks everybody for taking the time in watching this very video and listening to the very review I thought I might provide regarding this previous Sony HDR-CX240E from the days when it was working before it sadly stopped working, and the replacement being again a Sony HDR-CX240E, which is in thoroughly excellent working condition and working in a way just as well as this one did. And hopefully this one will last me a great long while, hopefully 5.5 years, or maybe even 6 or 7 years. Or if I was exceptionally lucky, let's hope it lasts even 10 years, if we were to put a bet on it, but we shall see. Thanks for watching. And for those of you who do have camcorders, possessive ownership of camcorders, I would certainly recommend you make a reviewing video, reviewing what your thoughts are on the particular camera you have possessive ownership of, and whether you would recommend oneself to purchase it or not, if they wanted to, in your suggesting recommendation of opinions within opinionated thoughts and things. Within my opinionated thoughts, would I say a Sony HDR-CX240E would be a good camera to purchase? Well, though I do not know everything about them, but from the experiences I've had with having now two, I would certainly recommend oneself purchase one if they wanted to. Thanks all for watching, and ta-ta another time. From Foxy. Though this is very, very much my batched set of opinionated thoughts, I would certainly recommend oneself purchase a Sony HDR-CX240E cameracorder. For those of you who are appealed to those kinds of camcorders, but everybody has different interests. But the review I thought was worthwhile, and do let me know what your thoughts were on the review of this video. Thanks all very, very much indeed for watching. Many profound thanks, most certainly indeed.